Hello, hello, my Story Archives family. I've got a surprise episode here for you that I wanted to get out there while everything is still sort of fresh in my head. But you're going to get a solo off the dome series review of Task on HBO. I was going to say HBO Max, but it's now HBO. So I'm just going to run through the entire series. Don't mind the blasting white light. I'm using the IMDb website for the character key, but they just don't have a dark mode. So I'm just getting blasted in the face by all of these, all this blue light or white light. That's can't be good for your skin. I would have to say that. Anyways, I'm your host Mario Busto. I am not joined by my co-host Zachary Newton. He doesn't even know I'm doing this right now, but he didn't watch the show. I don't think so. He doesn't get to be a part of the solo pod, although he's probably going to be listening to this because he'll probably be the one editing this particular episode. So thank you, Zach. I'm going to do a little sort of rundown. I don't know how long this is going to go for, but I think Task, there's two shows I watched and that I finished in the last week that I think are deserving of a solo pod. So I'm going to give that to the audience because I think other people probably watched the show because I know this was my most anticipated series of the year. I think I'm on the record of saying that Task was one of the shows I was most looking forward to. There was 3 shows I was really looking forward to in the month of September, October, and that was Task, that was House of Guinness, and that was Alice in Borderland. 2 of those 3 are deserving of a series review. The other one was not. You'll have to know which one of the ones were when you see the other episode launch as well. So anyways, let's get into it because Task just wrapped up this past Sunday, which threw me off because I thought I was wrapping up the week before. So I was a little bit pleased that I got the extra episode that I wasn't expecting, right? But I think Task is a breath of fresh air in a diluted show offering world that we have right now. Shows right now, in my opinion, are reverting back to that unhealthy thing that the NBCs and the Foxes used to do where they're not doing 20 episode seasons anymore, but they're dragging stuff on for longer than it needs to be, for seasons longer than it should go, instead of just being true to the source material and giving the audience the best show possible. And I think I'm on the record of saying this personally and publicly. I still don't think any network has surpassed HBO in terms of being able to tell like grounded character dramas the way that they're able to. And I think that see Task in the way that it was in its completion is HBO at its best, in my opinion. It's the creator of Mayor of Easttown, and it's a continuation of that. Now, I wouldn't personally rank it above Mayor of Easttown. I think they're 2 different types of shows. I wouldn't necessarily put this in the category of True Detective either, although I think it leans a little bit more towards that. Mayor of Easttown kind of scratches that itch of the detective mystery, so to speak. You did have a little bit of mystery in this one, and they did try to throw you off the scent at various times. For example, with now I got to go through the cast to remember everybody's names. With Tom's boss, Kathleen, I was under the impression that she was a dirty cop the whole season because the way they made a certain phone call that she took seemed like she was on the taking the same way Grosso was, but perhaps with a different higher up element of the Dark Hearts or the motorcycle gang that is the chief antagonist in this series. But you see even with them that they have their own sort of code of honor and things that they don't do. So like, for example, one of the core things in the series is the little boy Sam, whose parents get killed by Robbie and his crew accidentally because they weren't trying to go in there and kill anybody. They were just trying to steal money, and it was Robbie's own way of getting back at the gang that killed his brother, Billy. So let's get into it a little bit with the series, my overall review of it. It, to me, was perfectly done in most of the ways. Now, I will say the second to last episode, I was rolling my eyes a little bit in the forest shootout. And the only reason I would say that is Well, there's multiple reasons why I would say that, because we'll kind of like reverse engineer and go from the end to the beginning in some ways. Was because it was a little bit unrealistic, and not by a little bit I mean a lot of it. First and foremost, and feel free to comment in the comment section your take on this, if you agree or you disagree. Um, Jason opening fire, to me, that's the thing that made, like, I can wrap my head around that a little bit. Still, probably not the approach one would have taken in that scenario. But being that he has Perry with him the whole time, Jason kind of knows he has like a certain death sentence, and that Perry's his sort of father figure, who's the only one who's really stopped this from occurring so far. And I think he's so desperate to get the drugs back simply to save his own life, because he knows that if he doesn't get it, he's pretty much dead. So he kind of has to take matters into his own hands. Perry knows that once you start shooting at the FBI, you're entering in a whole different territory, because you even see the higher up guy, who I'm blanking on his name. I'd have to find him here, but he's the one who Grosso kills in his house at the end. I think his name is it Breaker? Whatever. We're not going to get lost in that. You guys know who I'm talking about. He's the higher up. It's not Breaker. Breaker was the enforcer. He was the higher up guy who kept on giving Perry a bunch of crap. Like, whenever Perry was getting into trouble, it was that guy who he was calling. So he was also the point of contact for Grosso's connect with the motorcycle gang as well. So, Jason knew he was on the way out with those guys no matter what he did. So he really had to desperately do that. The other thing, though, was that these agents didn't call for any backup at all. So they were wandering into the woods to go pursue somebody who they don't know if he's super violent or not, right? Tom has an idea that Robbie's not a bad guy, but nonetheless, you're going in there 4 people versus, an unknown number if you're on their side, right? We're watching the show and we know it's like not a ton of people, but nonetheless, in this particular scenario, you would have already probably called backup if I had to guess. So, aside from that sort of anticlimactic showdown that takes place that leads to Robbie's death, which was very unsatisfying, considering the whole time you kind of wanted him to kill Jason, and Jason does get a bullet between the eyes. And I will say that I think that the way Jason's storyline concluded was the best way it probably could have, because it leads to the resolution with another character who I'm glad got his sort of due justice in some way, right? And that would be Grosso. The thing that HBO does best, and it's one of the reasons why I say that they're the best in the game at these character dramas, is because they don't really do a black and white. Nothing is black and white in an HBO character drama. They really capture the human, the brokenness of humans, and the fact that there's a character who may be a good person, but they're a flawed individual, right? For example, Robbie. Case in point in the series, he's robbing houses, he's robbing a motorcycle gang, but deep down that Robbie's a good dude. And you kind of, as the audience in some way, we all are Tom Brandis in some way, right? Because this is an ex-priest who is having his own sort of internal wrestlings with his faith because his wife was killed by his adopted son, which is just such a... I knew somewhat that that's where the series was going in some way, that something had to do with the son. But when the way that they tell the story is so eloquently done, that you just can really, in an HBO series like this, when they're at their best, you really can relate to each of the characters. Because I know the majority of you, like me, were rooting for Robbie to survive, to somehow get away, or at the very least do what he did, which was to leave the money behind for Maeve and to give his kids a better future, right? And to be honest, if we're gonna keep it, a buck 100, there was no way for Robbie to get out of the situation that he was in without some sort of collateral damage. But speaking about Grosso, he's another flawed character. You see him fall in love with Lizzie earlier in the series, right? And his direct involvement with the gang leads to Lizzie being killed because he's letting these guys get away, which leads to Jason and Perry getting in the truck, which leads to Jason running Lizzie over with the truck, right? But you see that Grosso's not a bad guy, even to the point where he has these deep, um, or somewhat surface level theological discussions with Tom about his faith, um, and the whole time you're not really at that point understanding it from like as the audience, but he's asking because he is not at peace with himself, with the way that he's compromised his own character or his own integrity by taking this money from the gang, right? And you see his integrity in different ways, in subtle ways, like when he goes to Lizzie's house and he's about to sleep with her, and he feels bad that it's the marriage bed, right? That he doesn't want to defile her marriage bed in any way. And so they make a compromise and they move to the couch or whatever. Those are little small things, but you can see that he does wrestle with something, whereas the average person would probably not give a damn, right? So they make you care about Grosso and the fact that he's ultimately not a bad guy. He's trying to give his family a better chance. He loves his nephews and his sister. His sister, I saw her in something recently. I think she's in the show on Apple TV. Um, God, I'm blanking on the name of it, but then it's the new one with Owen Wilson that just came out, the golf one. She she plays like this super. I haven't gone far enough in that series because they haven't been able to hook me in. I like Owen Wilson's character, but I don't like the kid who they cast as like the golf prodigy. I just can't. I just don't buy it. Um, so they tried to do the Ted Lasso formula, but it didn't hook me as early as Ted Lasso did. Anyway, so she's Grosso's sister, and I'm very happy that Grosso kind of had his redemption moment, right, where he goes and saves Maeve and ultimately saves a bunch of people, right? Because he takes out his handler, the guy who's kind of led him down this corrupted path, and then he kills the guy who is his direct report. Which, by the way, there was an element there where actually Grosso doesn't die. I'm tripping. My bad, guys. If I say Grosso died, my bad, because I'm just remembering the hotel room scene, which is gonna make whatever. I don't think I said he died, but it gave absolute proper redemption to his story. And unless he confesses, he killed the two main guys who had any sort of evidence on him, probably. So seems like Grosso kind of cleaned up his own way of surviving, of not going to jail, so to speak. Hold on one second. I want to know like where the okay. I kind of wanted to ask if there was any sort of notes on whether Grosso goes to prison or anything like that, but that's not what these shows typically do. They'll never kind of give you that sort of closure, but it does seem like he's gonna have to pay for the crimes that he committed in some way. Um, let's talk about some performances in the series. We'll dive more into the story in a little bit, but I was specifically was impressed again with Tom Pelphrey, who from Ozarks. I mean, he absolutely carries, man, and I really think that specifically, I mean, it was a well acted show all around. I thought the casting was very good, but specifically the actors that stood out to me was definitely Tom Pelphrey, Emilia Jones, who plays Maeve, his niece, and then Mark Ruffalo. Just there's a subtle strength in his performance that I think he makes it look a lot easier than what it is. Honestly, I really do think that he's one of the best actors in the world. Um, and there's just like you see him in a series like this, and you know he's just able to carry and play so many different dimensions of his own character that um, you got to just tip your hat to him. I will say he should have died in the fight with Perry Durazo, though. I don't think Tom Brandis survives that fight, if I'm being honest. So there's that. As for the series itself, things that I was kind of hoping would go a little bit longer, um, but it's a double-edged sword, right? Like if you push it too long, then it gets a little bit unrealistic. I love heists. I love like anything that has to do with heists, like the Town or the Ocean series or anything like that. And I wouldn't have minded seeing a couple more Robbie Prendergast heists at the biker houses. I could have done for at least like one more before you got to the what ended up being the turning point in the series, which was Sam's parents being killed, and then Robbie now going from burglary to murder, right? So now he takes the kid, which deep down, if you're thinking about it logically, you're like, you can't keep Sam. Like you literally killed his parents. Like you're not getting this isn't a fairy tale, right? That you're gonna have to give him to someone else at some point because Sam's eventually gonna be a grown man, and when he finds out what Robbie did, it's gonna be horrible. It kind of reminds me of Vinland Saga a little bit, but with ignorance of not knowing who was behind it. Overall, I think that the series leaves you like just with a definitive closure with almost everybody's storyline. Some characters felt a little bit like sideshows, like Aaliyah. I thought we'd get a little bit more deeper into her character and things going on in her life, but she was very much a side character, literally a side character. We don't really see too much of her. We do get a little bit of her background that she was somebody who dealt with domestic abuse, but we didn't go much further than that. And we also didn't go too far in the fact that she was like a certified sharpshooter. Like she had won a bunch of awards with sharpshooting. So I thought that would come into play at some point, and it really didn't. In barely any place in the show. There was a few spots, but nothing that you would say that she was able to step up. But I also think that is to the credit of the show, because they were just decided they were going to do 7 episodes, get in, get out, tell the story neatly, and they didn't take it for a second longer than it needed to go, right? And so our main centerpiece stories were the family of Tom Brandis, the healing that was taking place from his late wife's death, right? From the fact that he had not visited his son in jail, to his adopted daughter Emily, to his own daughter who's going through a secret divorce. All of these different things that he was grappling with and dealing with at the same time, to even adopting Sam, which I do think that his friend, the Father Daniel, he's in like 2 of the episodes where he's talking to Tom, and like in the church world they'll tell you like pastors need pastors. Like, Father Daniel seems to be like a fellow associate in that, but somebody who also seems to pastor Tom Brandis in that. And I do think he gives him sound advice that Tom has. It's not that Tom couldn't handle the responsibility of fathering Sam and that he wouldn't have done a good job. It's that the rest of Tom's life is going to be dedicated to his son and pretty much treating his son, right? That's just more than likely that's going to be the remainder of his life, especially if his issues are as bad as he was talking about in his statement, right? Which is another like really heavy topic, because you have that really good episode with Emily, the sister of Ethan, who feels bad. She feels bad. She says that she can never not be happy or grateful. She always has to feel grateful, never have a bad day. And so she really has to grapple with the fact that I think her core conflict was not ever feeling like she was really part of this family, right? And so she had to come to grips with like the moment you're adopted, you have the same rights as the blood, like the actual blood daughter of Tom Brandis, right? Why do they have her so low? Why is she so low? Oh, is it because she doesn't come in until episode... Where is she? Sorry, guys. Why am I blanking on her name? Is it just Sarah? I think it's Sarah. Anyways, they don't have her as Sarah Brandis, so it's probably because she's getting divorced in the show. But her whole conversation with Emily about, you can have a bad day, you can throw a fit, you can have a temper. It's not, you're not being ungrateful for speaking your mind in some ways. And then she's also conflicted because her brother killed her mom, right? So And that, man, that's a dark thing even to like think about or to even talk about. But it is a reality. And they even found a way of making it, man, it's such a good written show. Because in his statement before the judge, he even talks about how the pandemic made the meds that his son was on, there was a shortage of meds for it, right? So the little things like that they're tying into current events that, at home might be something that somebody can relate to. Hopefully not to the degree of how dark Tom's backstory is, but it ends up being a story of forgiveness for Tom, right? To forgive his son. And you can see his son is destroyed. You see his face and he can't even look at his dad in the eyes. But it's very much I'm not going to say it's a version of the prodigal son story, but it is, the message is similar in that you're always welcome at home. And to see Tom go from not being able to visit his son the entire series to having that emotional moment was key. In terms of how Maeve's storyline wraps up, you kind of feel bad for Maeve. She ends up being like the fan favorite character. At least she was my favorite character. She also makes me want to go watch Coda. I have not watched Coda, and I know I am the Apple TV guy, and I haven't watched Coda, so that is on the top of my list is to go watch that and do that. By the way, Apple TV is making some moves, guys. They're bundling with Peacock now. They are no longer Apple TV Plus. They're going to be Apple TV. That was a common sense thing, right? They should have done that from the beginning. And then they just finalized the deal. I think it was for $750 million to secure the exclusive media rights for Formula One. So I think Apple TV has about 40 million plus subscribers. Netflix has 300 million plus. Netflix has a whole damn country worth of subscribers. So Apple TV has some catching up to do. I don't think they ever will catch up to Netflix, especially because Netflix now, you've got a lot of interesting things happening in Hollywood right now. You have Larry Ellison, the billionaire, just bought Paramount, and then Paramount bought, did they buy Warner Brothers? Did he buy Warner Brothers? Who the hell did he buy? He just bought somebody massive. Okay, so he bought Paramount. That was what I just said. They tried to buy Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers rejected it. Now Netflix is going to be in contention to try to buy Warner Brothers. In some sense, I work in production, right? I would love to work on TV shows. I'd love to work on films and in my own shows and whatnot. In some sense, I like what's going on. This decentralization out of LA. LA was like the Mecca. I mean, it was it's a shit show in some sense. If you don't live over there, that you have to go and relocate over there. And it's been decentralized completely. I've listened to countless stories of people who they're working on films and TV shows outside of LA because their own heavily regulated policies are killing their industry over there. So Andrew Scholes, the comedian, was filming a movie in Australia, and he asked the producers, he said, why are we not filming in LA? And they said, or he asked them, where is LA now in terms of the list of places to shoot? He said, it's not even in the top 10 because Australia was giving them 60% off to go film over there. So where's my point here, and where am I going with this conversation? You're seeing a massive decentralization and the power shifting to different states. You're seeing Las Vegas, you're seeing Texas, you're seeing New Jersey, Georgia is continuing, North Carolina, Florida has their head up their butt at the moment. It seems like that we don't really prioritize tax incentives like that at the moment, which I wish we would. And just you're seeing a lot of that different stuff going on. But the side that is questionable, and I don't know if it's good, is that you're seeing these big conglomerates like Netflix, like Paramount, consuming everybody and getting towards monopoly territory, where you're going to essentially have, not that it was much different before with Disney and that, you're going to have about 5 companies that own everything, right? That's just what it's going to be. And to be honest, that's a bit too big. I don't know why. It's just, I think when you have more competition, it's better in general for the product. You see it in almost every facet of every industry. The moment that somebody has a chokehold on something, quality just dips because there's nobody who can go and take your lunch, right? So, anyways, it'll be interesting to see what happens there with Apple TV as they continue. There's a lot of good stuff out there right now, Last Frontier, all that stuff. But we're talking about HBO, and HBO has their stuff coming up around the corner too, which is namely Game of Thrones. Which, by the way, don't forget that HBO is Warner Brothers Discovery, if I'm not mistaken. I got to look into that. Doesn't Turner Group, man, we can go on a rabbit hole on a whole different side podcast. I'm not going to keep on going down this rabbit hole. But anyways, overall, I give Task, I haven't really thought about a number out of 10, but it lived up to the hype that I had hoped for it. I had wished it would have been a little bit more of a thriller. It seems like we lost all element of the thriller the moment Sam's parents get killed. But overall, the show wins in my book, and it at least gets like a 8.5 out of 10 for me. That forest shootout probably deducts about 0.5 off the top for me. Also, I really loved Robbie, and I would have liked to have seen him survive, even if it would have been unrealistic. So, but anyways, anything else we can talk about? I talked about favorite characters. Got to go to Robbie and to Maeve. I'd give Maeve, where she's going to end up now. She's got about $1 million to her name, but she also has the 2 kids to take care of. So she's sort of been thrust into the single mother role, which you feel bad for her, but at the same time, Robbie's daughter and her have a lot in common, right? They were both killed by the same man, by Jason, who, has there ever been a character who deserved a bullet between the eyes more than that guy? Unfortunately for him, not for him, for his wife or his girl, Erin, the way she died was horrible. I would have liked a better end for her too. And then horrifying death for Cliff Broward. I can't think of a much worse way to die than the way he died. So shame for him. And yeah, overall, great series. Do I put it above Mare of Easttown? No, I don't. Why? Because I'm a sucker for those moody detective thrillers. And there's just something nice about those. They kind of fit it. They slot into a different category. But I do hope that this is a continuation of a strategy we see different streamers take. You just saw Netflix do it with the show with Eric Bana about the park ranger in Yosemite. That's a standalone series. I think we need more 5-6 episode things. I think like Black Rabbit, that's another one. I do think they went about 2 to 3 episodes too long on Black Rabbit, and it wasn't anywhere near as good as Task. But nonetheless, give us more of these shows where it kind of fits into the epiphany I had years ago that you can do so much more with a TV show in terms of character development than you can do in a film. It doesn't take away from a film being great, but how many films have you watched that you didn't think to yourself a little bit like, damn, I wish they did 3 episodes, like 3 hour-and-a-half long episodes of this story rather than 1 hour and 20. And maybe that's a thing we see in the future where we have films that are mini-series, and when you go to the movies, we do it kind of like a TV show. Like episode 1 is going to be, we got movie show times for weeks 1 through 2. And then episode 2 is going to be weeks 3 through 4. And episode 3 is going to be weeks 5 through 6. And you kind of have like a communal sort of gathering where we start putting TV shows in the theater. I think you could start to see something like that. If you think about it, it kind of would work for a lot of films, films that have sequels and trilogies. You could just film all at once. Film them all at once and release it as a 3-part mega thing, right? But is that as good for box office? Is that as good for sales? Probably not. You might have to stagger it a little bit more, like Stranger Things is doing with season 5 or whatever, their final season they're on. But why shouldn't Stranger Things put their stuff in theaters? Why don't they do that? I think they should. I really think that people would pay for it. I really think that people would want to go see that series finale with a theater full of people. Now, myself, maybe I'm not the demo for that. I've never liked... You know what it is, man, is that I'm from... Like, I find that people are not really respectful in movie theaters most of the time. Maybe it's where I'm from, but I find that most of the time I go to a movie theater at night or down here in South Florida, I find that most of the places I go to, you're going to run into an issue with something. Now the seats are separated, so you're not going to have so much seat kicking. But like you got some dude on their phone, in the third row. It's just like a lack of respect in society. And I don't know what it is, but it's one of the reasons why I like a matinee, because I'm going for the movie. I'm not going for whether the person next to me is laughing at the movie or no, I'm not going for any of that. I'm going to watch the movie, and I don't want to have to deal with distractions while I'm in there, because we are like in such a distraction heavy society that people can't just unplug for an hour and a half without being a distraction. So anyways, that's my soapbox. Thank you for listening to Story Archives. This was a solo review of Task. Highly recommend that you go watch it if you haven't. If you listen to this whole podcast without having watched it, I don't know why you did that. But go watch it. If you are, unless you're like a masochist, is that what that's called? When you like being hurt? Unless that's what you're into and you just like being spoiled. I am not one of those people, so I don't understand you. But nonetheless, yeah, absolutely. Listen to the podcast twice. So once again, thank you. I'm Mario Busto. You can go and sub to this podcast if you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more content that we're putting out there. We're covering Slow Horses on Apple TV. I'm going to be dropping another solo surprise pod very soon. And yeah, stay tuned. Email us at contact@soapbox.house. Or better yet, just leave some comments below. Make sure to leave a like on the video. As always, thank you for supporting us. We love you all, and see you soon.